listening to the Hunter Conservationist Podcast.
Horde. Okay, we're rolling. I think there is a resurgence in Canada of sort of getting back to grassroots hunting conservation clubs, organizations, whether they're national, provincial, or just a local community club, and maybe a trend back to the meetings in the coffee shops, the meetings in the hotel meeting rooms, the face-to-face interactions. I don't know if I'm reading it wrong, but it feels like it. It feels like that's happening in this country, and I, of course, COVID came along and made everybody not touch each other, and so we were scared to have meetings and talk and stuff. But it almost seems like email and digital meetings, the Zooms, the team meetings, that whole social media thrown in there. We were just like, okay, this is the way to communicate. It's going to be more efficient. We're going to come to more agreements. We're going to get along better. We're going to understand each other better. And then now we're all going like, holy, what happened to that experiment? Because we see it, hunters getting mad at hunters and, stuff on social media, whatnot. And so I don't know. I just kind of, and I get a sense from people of this yearning to get back to that. So there's a renewed interest in community, I feel. And I think there's a synergy happening that maybe never existed before in Canada that's happening between organizations across the country that have different, focal points, different, cultures, different mandates, but we're coming together and I feel like we're on the doorstep of a new era in Canada with the hunting conservation organizations of creating this ecosystem that's going to have a better balance of face-to-face direct communication, conference meetings, and communicating in the digital space as well. So I think that's super cool. One of the organizations that is really up and coming and you've been here before. Safari Club International has been in Canada for a long time, but rebranded Safari Club International. Canada seems to be one of these organizations that's on this resurgence. And Chris started work, it must be just a little over a year now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in your new role. So we're going to learn all about what Chris is doing in the organization. And I just, at the outset, I just want to kind of say thanks to the bigger organization, Safari Club International, for seeing the value in Canada as the second largest country in the world, the leading exporter of hunting animals to the United States. We're larger than South Africa, which I think is second for hunter exports, and we're the leading destination in the world for U.S. hunters coming up here. So as a U.S.-based parent company, thanks to SCI for investing in Canada. And of course, SCI has its charitable grant foundation side, the Safari Club International Foundation, which is also seeing value in investing in Canada that we'll hear about. So this whole episode is going to dive into the world of Safari Club International Canada with Chris, and we're going to see where this goes. Hey, everybody, it's Mark Hall, your host.
And it's Curtis Hall, your co-host. The Hunter Conservationist Podcast is proudly brought to you by J. Martin Taxidermy, a family-run business driven by passion, tradition, and a deep respect for the outdoors. Founded by avid conservationist Jesse Martin in West Kelowna, British Columbia, alongside his wife, Casey, and their two boys, J. Martin Taxidermy brings generation of hunting heritage and artistry to life. Born and raised in the Okanagan, Jesse grew up surrounded by the wild, inspired by a home filled with taxidermy that felt more like a museum. What began as a hobby quickly grew into a lifelong calling, fueled by formal studies in wildlife and forestry conservation and refined through professional training at the Penn School of Taxidermy. With a commitment to excellence, Jesse continues to hone his craft through national conventions and seminars, ensuring that every mount tells a story and preserves a memory. As always, big shout out, big thank you to Jesse and Jay Martin Taxidermy for supporting what we do here on the show. So thank you, Jesse.
I had some correspondence with Jesse last week, some emails, and he's been investing time in fatherhood this summer. His boys are getting older, so they've been out camping and fishing and whatnot. And Jesse's looking forward to coming over our way again this fall for elk hunting. He got his first bull elk over here. So this is kind of an interesting story. So Jesse and his business are the title sponsor of this podcast for quite a while. And we're hugely grateful for that. He's been making the pilgrimage from central British Columbia, the Okanagan, over to where Curtis and I live in the East Kootenay region, closer to the Alberta border for years and years and years on an elk hunt. And he's been hunting with my family, actually, cousins and second cousins and whatnot. And they got this big camp and horses and trailers and everything. And it was just within the last couple of years that sort of put two and two together. So that's how all this came apart. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, thanks, Jesse. Thanks for everything you do. So as a little fact about taxidermy, I'm going to have to get people to start reaching out because there's only so much about facts about taxidermy. We started way back with the Egyptians and there's only so much that's available. But one little thing I did hear, which was kind of interesting, in the old days, in the early, I guess, growth period of taxidermy as, an official art craft, that stood alone as itself, even as a science, that taxidermists that were developing curing methods for the hides and tanning methods and preserving methods were developing these concoctions, kind of like mad scientists, and they would not share it. There are stories of some of these old-time taxidermists that actually took these recipes for preserving hides to the grave with them. They did not divulge their secrets over their lifetime. So kind of makes me think of like the mad scientist or the gold miner. It's like nobody's going to have this, so I'm going to hide this bucket of gold or whatever. So kind of speaks to the character of the early pioneers in taxidermy. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Chris Everett, you are the new, seasoned, fully settled into your new role as the chapter/advisory services specialist for Safari Club International Canada.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the show. In my role, about 50% of my job is to support the chapters in their work across this country. And obviously their membership and everyone involved in that. And then the other half is advocacy. So government work, talking to legislators on the provincial side as well as the federal side, and just making sure that they're putting hunting and conservation first and foremost in their decisions. And anything that kind of happens that might hinder our ability to get in the outdoors or hinder wildlife population from being able to thrive in their environment, we step in and we advocate for that. And we just want to make sure that sound policy is being made in Canada and bring all of our hunters' perspectives to the table.
Right. Yeah. No, it's, I follow the work you're doing, like you, what Chris is doing as well as the organization. And I see a lot of high level meetings, in Ottawa, in the province and stuff on exactly those topics. And it's so needed, we keep telling the average hunters in this country, it's like, meet with your MLAs, write your MPs, like they need to hear from you. They want to hear from you. That's why they're in public service. And I don't know, it seems like to be the scariest thing in the world is to tell a hunter to go in and sit down with their elected official for half an hour and just, yeah, I don't know what you hear, but the biggest thing I hear is like, well, I don't know all the science and all, and everything. And it's like, you don't need to. You just need to go in and say what's important to you, what values are important to you, and you would like to know that how they're standing up for that. But do you see a change, or is that a moniker that exists in your world as well?
Across the board, I am seeing more people become more vocal on social media, obviously. We are seeing a few more elected officials starting to get involved and to step up and recognize the importance that hunting, fishing, trapping has had to our history. We just saw the Hudson Bay Company sold, right? And they went bankrupt. So that is part of our country's identity and what Canada was built off of. And I think it's super important that we make sure that we aren't losing our heritage activities, and we are still recognizing the fact that hunting, trapping, and fishing are just so integral to the base of our country. And there are a lot of people across the country that still participate in all of that, and get involved. And we are seeing more and more people taking firearms courses and hunting courses. And it's nice to see a lot of the provinces have moved their hunter education online so people can do the courses and still be able to take up hunting. Firearms courses are a little bit harder to find these sometimes, but they are actually getting out there and getting involved, which is important to see.
Yeah. So, the tagline Safari Club International is first for hunters. Like that's like a tagline, but are you able to sort of articulate like your mission in Canada? You don't have to quote it, because then the folks from your team that are listening going, oh,
Yeah. Might get that wrong.
Just give us the overall meaning. We're not looking for
So
recital.
yeah. So first for hunters is I like to expand on it and say we're first for all hunters. So a big misconception is our name, Safari Club International. People automatically think that we're an African advocacy organization that's for rich people who are traveling abroad to go hunt a lion or an elephant in Africa. And that is, while we advocate for hunting across the board, we are working on, caribou studies in Newfoundland. We could talk a little bit more a little bit later about grizzly bear studies in BC. We're a group that really is fighting for, every type of hunter, whether you're hunting upland bird or migratory bird, all the way to white-tailed deer, to moose, whatever. If you hunt, it doesn't matter what you hunt, we stand behind you, and we want to protect your ability to live your heritage lifestyle and your way of life. So it really, in Canada, it's more about protecting our heritage. That's something that I always talk about, is our heritage activities, our heritage lifestyle. And that's what's important to me and what's important to our whole team, and the team down in the US that supports me in my job here, is to be able to protect our ability to continue hunting across this great country.
Yeah, no, very, very good, very good. Yeah, I mean that's a great, sort of way to put your mission without it being the polished the polished version that's on the website. So this is a bit of a rabbit hole. So when an organization has a name, Safari Club, right, and that's what people think. So an organization kind of has a couple of choices going. The nomenclature's changed, so we need to rebrand and have a new logo to kind of like fit in with, and then every couple of decades or every generation you're having to like meet the new, or you can just sort of be like, this is our roots, we started, this is the name, this is our history, but this is what we've evolved into as an organization. I get the impression that Safari Club is staying true to its roots, starting around that, but over the decades it's evolved into all of these things everywhere for every hunter, everywhere, maybe everywhere in the world, almost. But my question, well, for both of you guys, why does the term safari seem to conjure up images of Africa and not North America? Because some of the big hunts that used to happen in the early 1900s were like 30-day hunts for stone sheep into the northern Rockies in British Columbia, and 40, 50, 60 horses on these pack strings. Like, isn't that a safari? Like, why is that not a North American name.
like too sure why people just associate safari with lions. I think Africa maybe has just done such a phenomenal job at marketing their hunts as safaris. And then they
Yep,
also have
yeah,
photo safaris and just, backwoods safaris that
true.
go into the waterfall areas and a lot of the southern African countries and stuff. So I think it's just that brand recognition almost, right? People
Gotcha.
associate that word with Africa, but we've got outfitters across North America that call themselves safari, like,
Oh
uh,
yeah, yep,
right? Like,
yep.
so we do have hunts in Canada and in the US that would be considered safaris because the outfitter name is that, but people just don't associate it with that. And um, yeah, I'm not too sure beyond that.
Yeah, it's interesting. What do you
Yeah.
think, Curtis? Are you going to change your vernacular and be like, I'm going on a goat safari this year?
Yeah, I think it's just that. I think it's just the marketing thing. Like it's and a
Okay.
culture. I think a lot of the quote unquote safaris in Africa were based off of, you got guys like Teddy Roosevelt like would go over and do these grand hunts and they
For a whole
always,
year.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they'd always just call them safaris where I don't know, yeah, it's kind of,
Yep.
I think it's just here, it's just kind of, again, with Canadian culture, I think it's just more of like, well, you're just hunting, like it's just a
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
not this
True.
like grand adventure. You're just like, yeah, I'm just going hunting. Like, I don't know. Probably
Yeah. Yeah.
probably a
True.
cultural thing, I'd say.
Yeah. I think so. And I mean, in Africa, they call the outfitters and the guides PHs professional hunters. In North America, they're called guides and outfitters. So yeah, there's some differences. In the UK, they call deer hunting deer stalking. So it's upland game bird hunting is shooting. North America, it's hunting. So anyways, that was a bit of a rabbit hole, but I think it's a worthy discussion, and it's good to hear. I think for folks to hear that, regardless of safari, like this is the most important word is Canada on the end of SCI, and that's what you're about. What is your focus? What is your strategic priorities right now in your job? And so you kind of got advocacy, and then you've got membership base. So maybe break down what your marching orders are there and what you have to create by the end of the year.
Ooh, um, yeah, obviously our grand goal or our big goal is to get more chapters on the ground in Canada. So
Okay.
currently we have 15 chapters. Um, and I've got a few that are kind of in the hopper. We're looking at Newfoundland as being a great location for a chapter. So with that is growing our membership across the country. Um, and then growing the membership within the chapters themselves to help the chapters do the important work that they're doing. So something that's unique about our how SCI does their chapters is, other organizations, while great organizations, they put kits in a box together for them to do banquets. They do a local fundraiser. All the money comes back to headquarters, and then you apply as a chapter to get money back for your local initiatives. Whereas SCI does it very differently. Um, you organize what your community would like. So you talk to outfitters, you get donated hunts or you get discounted trips. Like I see sturgeon fishing on the Fraser River at a lot of the banquets because that's just
Yeah.
such a
Yeah.
cool conservation program that's happening there. And people love to go fishing, especially in Eastern Canada. They love to go and fish those iconic fish. And so that's one of the charters that we tend to see quite a bit at our live auctions at chapter events. But the chapters put it together. They get all of the raffle items. They get all of the event items together, live auction, silent auction, all that. And then only 30% of the proceeds from their banquet comes to headquarters. That's it. 70% from their proceeds stays with that chapter for them to decide what they want to invest in locally, whether that's, a youth day at the gun range or an education of some sort, or if they want to invest in a conservation project on the ground, humanitarian aid. I know the Nova Scotia chapter actually takes a lot of bear meat from their guide outfitters and from hunters that come up that are returning to the US that might not be taking their full bear. They take that meat, they cook it, they turn it into, I think this past year was enchiladas, and they give them to the homeless shelters as a humanitarian aid program. And different chapters are doing different work like that. So they're able to invest that money and everyone attending those banquets knows that that money is going to stay local in their community for the betterment of their community. The Ottawa chapter does a big buck program in the fall where people buy tickets to enter, and then the proceeds all go to CHEO. Has nothing to do with hunting, but it has to do with the betterment of the community. And so that's what our chapters are there to do. They're to really put back into the community and to show that hunters care, and hunters want to enrich the lives of those around them. So that's part of my job. So I support the chapters. I try to get hunters together to start new chapters where there isn't a chapter already. And then some of our chapters that are, a little bit weaker, their board of directors have aged on and they're looking for some new young blood. I come in to kind of help rebuild them and get them back on their feet and get them going again. So that's part of my job. The other part, obviously, is the advocacy. So I reach out and I talk to the politicians in each province, the ministers of natural resource, ministers of wildlife, that kind of portfolio. I'm building relationships across the country that way. And then obviously on a federal level, I've been reaching out to make inroads in with the current federal government. I have a great working relationship with the opposition party, the official opposition, but I'm making inroads to work with the other parties as well, because at the end of the day, we all need to be united. We all need to work together and not just have one party kind of be our main contact, right? So we need to make sure that all the parties understand the importance of our organization and of obviously of our people as well. So that's kind of the work that I'm doing.
Very cool. Yeah, it's a good point on the federal advocacy or even provincial level, building those relationships, because it doesn't matter what you want as far as what where you want to vote and stuff. The reality is that over your lifetime, you're going to see political parties change. And I think, as an organization, as individuals, as a hunting community, we want to have the reputation where we can work with anybody, because we're first and foremost about the heritage, the people in the country that, that vote, and the and conservation and wildlife. I think that's important. So
yeah, it's super important to have those conversations across the aisle, and just a lot of them might not be from an urban or a rural setting. They're from an urban setting, and they just haven't had the exposure to it. So I think making sure that they're conversing with us and hearing our side and in a calm and respectful manner is what's important to have going on. And it doesn't always have to be combative, but if we approach things in a very respectful manner, I think that we can get this done, and we can grow that respect in that sense. Like, we can always agree to disagree, but I'll respect you for your opinions if you respect me for my opinions, and that's what's important, I think.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think hunters want everybody just to care about who, regardless of your political affiliation. You want everybody to care about wildlife and the land and conservation and fish and wildlife and folks' way of life or whatever. So yeah, very cool. One of the questions I had on your memberships is membership to SCI Canada. Is that at a national level, or do the chapters themselves have to recruit membership, like in British Columbia or in Alberta or Newfoundland? How does that structure work?
Yeah, to be part of a chapter, you have to have a national chapter, or sorry, a national membership. So you buy your SCI membership, and then you can join as many chapters as you want. Technically,
cool.
I might be staff, but I am definitely part of all 15 chapters across Canada, and people can be part of as many chapters as they want to be a part of, because you're really just supporting the chapter and the work that they're doing on the ground. You're getting the information, and then if you happen to be in the area and you want to attend their banquet, then amazing. Buy a ticket, go to their banquet, support the work they're doing. So you can be part of as many chapters as you want. There's no limit there, but you do have to have an active SCI membership in order to be part of a chapter.
Okay. Now, are there chapters in the territories?
Not yet, but I really want to get one going, especially in the Yukon. I think we do have a really good base of hunters up there that we'll be able to talk to, and that's next steps. I want to get Newfoundland off the ground next.
Makes sense.
There's
one at a time.
There's some chapters such as the Badlands in Alberta. That's an existing chapter that we need to grow and get new board members and get that off the ground. We have the Ontario chapter, which is based in the Greater Toronto area. So we're trying to get some people to step up and get involved there to get on the board of directors. We've got Southwestern Ontario as well that we're trying to rebuild. So there's some pockets there that we're, I'm also working on those at the same time as reaching out and finding new chapter areas as well. But if if a listener here is interested in learning more about SCI and the work that we do, and you think maybe a chapter in your area would be a good idea, you can always reach out to me. I can either point you to a local chapter that's close by, or I can work with you to build up and create a chapter, because there's really no limit into how many chapters. And honestly, the more chapters we have, the better voice we have within SCI as well. Because what's also unique is every chapter president actually has a seat on our board of directors for SCI, like the official big SCI board of directors. Every president is a voting member. So Canada is the biggest voting coalition outside of the US. And so we have some great ability to really voice our opinions and to get Canada to be at the forefront of a lot of decisions made. The more chapters we get, the better it is.
No, that sounds great. So I guess when you reach the stage where there's two chapters next door to each other in the two community halls or whatever, and they're like, hey, our meetings are on Tuesday nights, then it's sort of like, that's a good problem to have, because you've got a lot of chapters. So that's pretty cool. So just kind of shifting gears back to like national, provincial priorities, and maybe like kind of go down a little bit, not in the weeds, but like come down into details. So as an organization in Canada, what are you seeing as like the topics, like the things that you are prioritizing your discussions if, you have opportunities to meet with elected officials? And then conversely, you're probably hearing from your membership base, like coast to coast to coast. What are you hearing within the membership saying like, hey, this is important to us in British Columbia. This is important to us in Northern Ontario. And of course, they'll all want you to like take up their cause, but give us a flavor of these national, provincial priorities.
So right now in Newfoundland, there's a big issue going on with the federal and provincial governments looking to permit wind farms going in on Crown land. And a lot of this area is traditional hunting territory. There's a lot of guide outfitters that actually would lose their areas that they could hunt, because where they're looking at putting these in are actually key habitat for caribou and moose populations in these areas. So that's something that we're working with some of the guides on the ground and some of the hunters on the ground to kind of shape our response and to reach out to the governments during their consultation process. So we're staying very close attention, or paying close attention on that, and working on responses to that. In Ontario, the number one thing I hear all the time is about moose, the moose tag allocation. So it's something that I've talked to Minister Mike Harris about a number of times, and I'm in contact with his staff quite often about the need to change up again, but to make it better, how they do the tag allocations, because it's really not fair. We were told that we were going to a weighted system where the more points you have will basically get you a guaranteed tag. But I saw at a moose camp in the Halliburton area, two neighboring moose camps where one camp, the gentleman had, or one of the applicants at that camp had 16 points. The neighboring camp had a maximum of 12 points, but the 12-point camp got the bull tag and not the 16 points. So there's still some work there to do that I'm advocating for when talking to Minister Harris. And then we get into the prairies.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue because the Ontario tag system for the moose was in a really bad place before they brought in the weighted system, and I think there's still improvements to be made on it.
And that weighted system only came in about maybe like this might be the second or third hunting season that it's in place now. The second. It's not that long
I would
ago.
say I think it's since COVID. I think is
Okay.
I'd have to double check, but I know my points. I started probably 3 years ago, knowing that I wouldn't be able to get out on a moose hunt. I started applying in that 99Z zone that just gets me the point for the application and not necessarily put in for a draw. So I know it's definitely, it was being worked on, and then I think COVID hit, and then they launched it right after that as a new kind of system. So they just did a review on it to get some feedback and a consultation on it. So I think they're looking at some more proposed changes just to make it a better system. But it's still, I'm having contact with the minister's office about it.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when it first came out, it seemed like a very convoluted system. I remember it was like a flow chart, and it was like you apply, and then there's this thing, and then you if you get through the gate, then you're kind of like eligible, and then if you get drawn, then you got to say whether you want it or not, and if they don't hear you, then it goes back into the pool, and it's like reallocated, and I'm just like, holy smokes! I'm like, I'm not good at math, and I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah,
Squirrels.
It's like there's a first chance allocation, then there's a second chance allocation, and then there's the final kind of step. So they're looking at making some changes anyway to it to make it better.
But you're helping advocate. So prairies, what are you hearing on the prairies?
Prairies. A lot of the issue, especially in Manitoba, obviously has to do with the 30 by 30 and the Indigenous protected conservation areas. That is something of great concern to the hunters. I know that's a big issue that happens in BC as well. So it's conversations that need to happen to find, the common ground, make sure everyone is respected, all hunters are respected, and working together to conserve wildlife, but to also make sure that everyone has opportunity. And so that's something that I hear a lot about and that I'm paying close attention to, is any of those proposals. And then, Alberta with Minister Todd Lowen, he's done some amazing things for hunters, opening up youth hunts, the ability for, 12 years old to be able to apply for big game tags. Like, that's just phenomenal. I'd rather have a kid in the deer stand than have a kid playing video games any day. So I think he's doing some great work and for hunters in Alberta, and
yep, sure is. New opportunity to pursue black bears with hounds for the first time ever in Alberta, but tied to the caribou conservation areas as a use of hunting as a management tool to try to get calf mortality, caribou mortality under control a little bit to help those herds. I think that was a big win. So yeah, Alberta's like I'm kind of like the model. It's like, hey everybody, it's like look at the ethic, the management ethic in Alberta. And of course people are still like, have their issues on how things are being done or whatever. But I think, as a general, like to see a government and a minister that's like an advocate for hunting and for sustainable use and for conservation. It's like, gosh, when have we ever seen that in this country? An actual person who is a true advocate for hunting and for wildlife and trapping. So
I think the
easy
key there is,
portfolio in Alberta.
yeah, and I think the key fact there is that Minister Lowen is one of us. He's hunted his full life. He's um, very active and very knowledgeable with what hunting actually does for conservation of wildlife. And I think that's one of the key things is he is really bringing in that practical hands-on knowledge that he has and making the decisions that are best for conservation of wildlife. Hunters are not the type of people that are going to say, oh, wait, like if we keep hunting this species and it's going to go extinct, then, but I still want to hunt it. Like they're going to go, no, we want our kids and our kids' kids to be able to hunt this species. So we need to back off the land. We need to let them have their space. So that's what I respect about the majority of hunters is they do have that ethic and that importance and that understanding of letting nature do its thing and but assisting. We do have urban sprawl in the sense that we have to pay attention to how much we are on the land and the impacts that has to wildlife. So we have to help manage that wildlife. Minister Lowen definitely understands the importance of using hunters as a tool to help, specifically the caribou population, which is a big reason why we're doing that grizzly bear study in BC and working with the Tahltan Nation on that, because we need to know what is hindering the caribou from getting back in stable condition. Is it the grizzly bears? Is it the wolves? And so if we can figure out the amount of predation that the grizzlies are having on the caribou population, then we're going to have the science. We're actually going to have the data that no one has had before to see what that predation looks like and how can we as hunters help to manage that population to help those caribou. It's
Great study. So that's the one I
yeah.
alluded to at the start of the show. That's the Safari Club International Foundation that's supporting the research in northern British Columbia. As we're speaking, like literally, there's folks out looking for bears to stick collars on them and find out what they're up to or whatever. And that's great. I mean, I support that. That you're doing that. It's a collaborative with the Tahltan and the wildlife guardians, and they're right there wanting to learn as well. And we hear a lot in the hunting community. It's just like it's a no-brainer. It's the wolves, it's the grizzly bears, and I've seen examples of this around North America and Idaho. It was like it's the wolves, too many wolves, too many wolves. So they actually did a research project and they went, hey fellas, it's actually the cougars. So we're going to change the cougar quota season. A couple years later, calf elk recruitment started to skyrocket. So if the study comes out and it's the hunters are like, yeah, that's what we were telling you, I always see that as a positive thing for science. It's like we use this objective tool to reaffirm what boots on the ground we're saying, and multiple lines of evidence is the best way to get policy changed. So very cool that you're involved in that.
Yeah, and for the listeners, what they're doing is they're actually putting video collars on grizzly bears, so they'll be able to see the footage. They'll be able to review all of that and get all of the information from that to see where they're traveling and how they're impacting that. And I think it'll be really cool.
That's hilarious. Have you ever seen those videos of? So that little cartoon, it's not a cartoon, it's an actual one. There's that dog on Instagram that wears like the ski mask and he runs with the GoPro or whatever, Yeah. So, but it's kind of like that, but it's underneath the grizzly bear's neck. And it's sort of like you could imagine just sort of like lumbering along and pushing through. And then all of a sudden, like there's this chaos and it's like you just see this thrashing. And it's like a leg goes by or something, and the people analyzing it are like, was that a moose calf leg? Was that a caribou calf leg? Like, we can't tell what the heck is going on here. So that was some of the initial stuff that was done up in Alaska. And I remember seeing those videos going like, holy, it's kind of like throwing a GoPro down a well and then trying to figure out what happened on the way down. So
I do know that
I
they've
bet you
set
it's
up.
better now.
Yeah,
I bet you the technology is better.
I know that they've set up a number of cameras, like uh, trail cams and stuff like that also
Game
as
cameras,
part
yeah.
of it. So, yeah, game cameras, so that they'll be able to kind of see the movements in a more wide view. But we have one of probably the best bear scientists in North America that's leading the charge on this program. And Maria is phenomenal, and I think she's really hit the nail on the head on the direction to go with this, and working with the Taltan on best practices. She's got some of her former colleagues that are up there actually training right now and teaching people how to properly capture, how to properly, you know, tag them and get the collars on them too. So she'll be up there, and well, by the time this airs, she will have been up there already. But it's she's doing phenomenal work, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see the information that comes out of this.
Yeah, we look forward to when some of the preliminary interpretations of the data start to kind of flow out. So, I mean, it's a great thing if you know, if the research comes back and say, "Whoa, grizzly bears are having a big impact," then it's becomes the advocacy piece. You know, to have a united voice with, and I know the Taltan actively manage grizzly bears, and they are proponents of having hunting back to allow residents and the outfitters back managing them as well. But if it turns out that it's something else, and we're like, well, the grizzly bear's got the odd one here and there, but the scientists go, it's probably not enough to be altering population projections. Then, like you said at the start, it's like, okay, what's the next question? We've got to figure this out from the caribou's perspective. So that's the beauty of science, and it's awesome to see you guys behind, the use of that tool.
Just speaking on, caribou predation and stuff, we did a study years ago before my time with Safari Club in Newfoundland on the caribou populations there. We spent about $500,000 doing a study there. And what was interesting that came out of that was what was actually predating on the caribou herd and getting all of the little babies. A major proponent was eagles.
Oh, wow.
Eagles were coming in and eating the babies. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a similar effect on the West Coast, to see if they're predating too. But that was a big, like the biggest consumer of the caribou calves were eagles on the East Coast.
That is super interesting, because like I've spent a couple summers living and working up in Dease Lake in Taltan territory. So it's kind of interesting because, like the Stikine River, which flows through their territory, major salmon run from the Pacific through Wrangell, Alaska. And so the grizzly bears that live there are salmon bears, like a salmon ecosystem. Then when you move east and you get into the Spatsizi, the Clapan, into the Rocky Mountains, the Cotty Plateau, it's more of an interior driven system with the grizzly bears and the wolves. But on the big river system with salmon, you got eagles, and a lot of them. So the wheels are turning here, thinking these eagles are like, well, we got April, May, June before the salmon show up. So, April, caribou calves. Hey, everybody, let's go inland for a couple of months, right? And so that'll.
It could
gosh,
be.
would that ever be an amazing result?
Mm-hmm. It could very well be.
Yeah,
that's all part of it. So it'd be interesting to see how it
Yep.
kind of unfolds.
Yeah, hats off to the foundation for investing in that in Canada. What else are you hearing in BC? BC's like a crazy province because it's just ecosystem wise, it's so different than anywhere else in Canada. Like, I mean, coastal rainforest, killer whales to central interior prairies and burrowing owls in the Okanagan and cactus and, and the Rocky Mountains and, and everything. Like, there's a hotbed of issues here, but what are your members telling you?
Honestly, the grizzlies is the big one that I hear a lot from our members out there. Um, then, not so much on the ground conservation and wildlife management, but more, importing taxidermy from traveling and stuff. Trying to fly through Vancouver Airport is a big no-no. They're having
Jeez.
major issues getting through the airport, and so they end up flying through Calgary or Toronto instead, to do with the importing and the CITES permits and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we run into
And
more there.
I'll say it, Air Canada, because they have their policy of...
Air Canada definitely has their policy, but they typically, when you're importing, a range animal from Africa back into Canada, you have to go through a shipper instead of the airlines themselves. So you get around that, but we have issues with CFIA and CBSA on the actual importing, and there's delays, and so then shipments end up in storage facilities, racking up ridiculous amounts of money in storage fees while they're waiting for them to clear all of the customs and all of the CFIA inspections and all that stuff. And some of them get through really quickly. Typically, if you get through Calgary, you can get through all the inspections fairly quickly. But when you're in Pearson, we've seen guys have shipments that have taken or have cost the same amount as the hunt did because of the amount of storage fees that they've had to sit on. So that can be a big deterrent for hunters that are going to participate in conservation work around the world, and that it's frustrating to see. So that's something else that's kind of on my radar that I'm paying attention to, and I'm going to be advocating for whenever I'm meeting with the federal politicians, because that definitely falls in their realm of work that they need to work on.
Yep.
That's a federal thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, at the beginning, like on the advocacy side, you were talking about, building relationships with elected officials or governments in power. Are you able to invest sort of the same level outside of Ottawa on Capitol Hill, but at a provincial level? Like, are you making inroads there? Who's easy to work with if you are, provincially? Who's challenging to work with? Who's completely not easy to work with? Like, what are you seeing provincial wise?
Province-wise, Ontario and Alberta, honestly, are the easiest ones that I have to work with, but I have connections with the ministers and their offices from prior to me joining SCI, so that is an easier one for me to kind of manage. I've reached out. I met with the Manitoba minister when I was attending the Manitoba Lodges and Outfitters Association. He attended that, so we had a great conversation there. I haven't heard from him since, but
Forest fire season.
Forest fire season, yeah. I'm giving everyone a little bit of leeway there, but I'm going to be starting a new kind of introduction campaign, just reintroducing who we are to all of the provinces, because that's something that I don't think that they've really had the ability to do prior to me coming in, and getting the provinces to be aware of who we are and to get by the name and to actually understand the conservation work that we are investing in. And my hope is that it'll garner a lot more collaboration with the provincial governments on that point. On the federal side, we actually have had some good inroads and some feedback from the government itself, from the prime minister and his ministers. We have heard back from them when before we never heard anything from them. There was not even acknowledgement of our letters. So that is a great sign. And I'm looking at teeing up a bunch of meetings with Liberal MPs in the fall that have written back to me and said, let's meet in the fall, let's sit down and chat.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's very promising, and something I wanted to do, or that I'm going to be working on as well, as kind of a quick fact sheet for our members to reach out to their local politicians so that they can go and request meetings with their locally elected members of parliament and provincial members as well, so that they can feel comfortable having those conversations about what's important to hunters and conservation across Canada. Because I think it's a tool and a resource that isn't often handed out, but I think would be really beneficial.
No, I think that would be awesome. I've even heard other organizations, like their local clubs or individuals, will have these binders.
Mhm.
And so they literally go in and they have a meeting with their MLA, and it's like they got a copy for them and a copy for themselves. And they're saying, here's some talking points. We want to talk about this today. We think this is important. What do you think here? What do you think here? Here's a couple of things that we can follow up on. They know. And then they got this, like, this living binder document. And as you know, from having worked in elected officials' offices and stuff, like, everybody that walks into the office, it's like you got your name on a folder in a filing cabinet somewhere. So it's like, oh, hey, Mark Hall's coming in. And it's like, there's this, they come in, they set the folder down with your name on it and go, oh, here's some notes that we took last time you were here. So that's kind of a cool tool.
Mhm.
Kind of that catalog as well, because then it preserves the one person that was always doing a great job proverbially gets run over by a bus, and someone else is going to, pick up and learn from that. So,
Well,
yeah, good,
that
good for you.
idea stemmed from a conversation I had with one of our chapter presidents. They reached out to me for some ideas of how to talk to their local MP, because they know the information, but they're just not as comfortable, and it kind of was a light bulb moment for me, having worked on Parliament Hill for 10 years. I can just walk up to any of them and say, "Hey, Joe, it's nice to see you again." And my relationship with elected officials is just a little bit more different than someone who's never really done that before. So it was really kind of a light bulb moment for me to say, "Hey, I have the tools and the knowledge to put together, like, how to talk to a politician.
Hmm, hmm.
What's your best way to do it? And what is some tips and
They're
tricks
not
to make you
scary
feel
people.
They're not. They're really
They're not
not.
scary people. And
Yeah.
I remember this spring with members of the Legislative Assembly up in Edmonton. There, it was like, it's amazing how curious they are. Like, they don't strike up a conversation with you and say, oh, this is what we're doing, this is what I believe, this is whatever. They're like, what do you think? What do you know about this? What do and it's just like a million and one questions. You're just like, holy. And they're like, well, what do you mean by that? Can you go a little bit deeper? How would you define that? And they're just wanting all this intel from you. And it could actually catch you off guard a little bit, because it's like they just want you to, like, unload information on them, because that's their job. They hear this, they hear that, they hear that, and they go, hey, we've heard the same thing from 12 different people. Let's, you know, do something about it or whatever. So I
Yeah.
was, they're just curious people, and not scary at all. So
No, they're just like you and me. And that's where they started out, right? Like, they live in their community, and they decided that they had a calling to make change, when it comes to policy and legislation. So it's really easy to have conversations with them when you keep that in mind, that they're there
e-
because people put them
easier in
there. And
small towns too, I've
yeah.
heard. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, a lot easier in small towns, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Than in the big centers. So, um, is the firearms issue conversation part of SCI Canada's portfolio? Is that something that you're weighing in on? Or if you're like, no, we're just,
100% SCI Canada, they came out with a statement when C-21 and the handgun ban came out. They came out with a statement to say that they were adamantly opposed to it. So we're one of the few hunting organizations that actually stands behind sport shooters and handgun owners and AR-15 owners. And against the OIC, we're against the handgun ban. We just want, scientific decisions around guns in this country. We don't want things decided based on emotions or fears of politicians when they look at a gun and they think it looks scary. So um, that's what we're encouraging all politicians to think of, is is what the actual mechanisms of the firearm are, not what they look like. And to keep that in mind, and to make sure that they're not hindering licensed law-abiding firearms owners in this country, and to support them instead of attacking them.
Awesome.
So we'll see what's happening with the ban itself and with the buyback and the amnesty period, but I'm really hoping that this government, Prime Minister Carney has really put it out there that they got to cut spending. So what better project to cut spending than to not go through with this confiscation program where they're going to attempt to pay Canadians money for their guns? And how about we just let them have their guns and reallocate that money elsewhere where it's actually going to make a difference to public safety in this country?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I've been seeing the pulse of that in the media lately too, of, it could be on the chopping block as a money saving thing. And I think every time the tariffs hit, just China recently, like a 74% tariff on Canadian canola. So massive impact to the agriculture producers of the heartland of this country. So yeah, stuff like that is really going to come back to roost what hunting and sport shooting community have been saying for years and years. It's like, this is not the issue this country needs to deal with right now. It's like, so yeah, that could be the angle that'll give everybody the win. But congratulations for you guys weighing in on that one as well. I know some organizations in the country won't, because they just don't like to be caught up in the black rifle thing. And I'm like, man, it's gun's gun. So everybody stand up for each other. So
I mean, the Liberal federal government has done a great job at dividing our community. Pitting sport shooters versus hunters, and then even within the hunting community, pitting them amongst each other or against each other, bird hunter versus big game hunter. People who travel to hunt. There's nothing worse than the fact that we're all fighting amongst ourselves, because when we're looking at each other and fighting and pointing fingers at each other, we're not actually pointing at the real problem, and that's the government that's doing this to us in a sense. So I think it's important that we all kind of step back. And I know we talked about this on our podcast about Bob Sopak and the collaborative nature that he had, and just the mannerisms that he had, and the importance that we all come together and we all work together for the protection of our ability to live our life, and instead of pointing fingers and attacking each other and doing exactly what the government's trying to get us to do, is to have that infighting. So there's some cool stuff coming down the pipe when it comes to collaboration in this country on a federal level that I'm really excited about, but I can't talk too much about right now. But I think it's going to be some really great things for the Canadian hunting community as soon as we get ready to launch this in a few weeks. And I think it's going to do amazing things for the firearms owners, for hunters, for conservationists across this country. And I can't wait to tell everyone about it, but we'll have to keep mom's the word for now. But it's
good things happening. That comes back to that thing I said at the very beginning. There's a synergy growing in this country and an ecosystem that's building and there's some pretty cool things going to happen here in September, late-ish September. And so stay tuned for that. It's positive, super positive thing that's happening. SCI Canada is kind of right in there, helping kind of lead the charge on building this new thing coast to coast. So very cool. Chris, is there anything that you wanted us to talk about, that you want listeners to know about SCI Canada, what you're doing, where to find you? Of course, you'd love to have people grab a membership and start on the journey with SCI Canada. What would we miss?
Nothing too crazy, but just come check us out. We're on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. You can find more Canadian specific content. On a monthly basis, I send out an e-newsletter to all of our Canadian members, specific of all the work that we're doing in Canada, so you'll know what SCI is doing for you. So just check us out on our website, safariclub.org. SCI Canada actually has its own page in there with some information. So definitely check it out. And feel free to reach out to me if you ever have any questions, you want some more information about what we're doing and why to buy a membership. We'd love to have you, and I'm here to answer any questions that people may have.
Cool. So where can folks find you? Are you like staff directory on the website where
My information is listed on the SCI Canada page. So if you go to safari.org, you can navigate to the international tab and see Canada there, and you can find all my contact information right there.
Fantastic. And maybe last thing, just give folks a little kind of pitch in the global community getting together in Nashville. That is like a huge, huge thing. What would be your value proposition to say, hey, folks, come to Nashville because ta-da.
Okay. Obviously, Nashville and hunting go hand in hand. There's no better community for us to hold our annual convention there. But if you want to see something that's absolutely fantastic and mind-blowing of the hunting community coming together and talking about hunting around the world, and opportunities to book hunts in North America, in Africa, and Europe, come on down to Nashville. Our convention this coming year is February 18th to the 21st. There's a lot of really cool connections and networking that you can make while down there. There's a lot of Canadians that come down. But what's really cool too at our convention is the bilateral meetings that we have amongst elected officials. We have information sessions, best practices, all sorts of, seminars. Michael Hunter from Antler in Toronto always comes down and he puts on some fantastic cooking seminars. So there's some really cool opportunities and to network, to be around fellow hunters, and just, what's better than a week in Nashville. So
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, check that out, folks. It's worth going from small town Canada to big town Nashville, and everything that surrounds you is the world that you love, and things that you never know existed and whatnot. So pretty cool. Great, Chris. Thanks so much. Filling us in on Canada specific. This has been a great conversation. I think there's lots to come yet. So yeah, folks, get out there, follow social media, get a membership. If you do nothing but get a membership, you're supporting again, the mission in Canada, and that's what we're all about, is the conversation in Canada, the mission in Canada, standing up for Canadian hunting families. And in my opinion, the more organizations that are doing that in the country, if some of them are trying to come at the same thing from different angles, support them too, because that's just a good thing. Because boy, there's some organizations out there with some billionaire philanthropists that are trying to stop what we're doing. So your membership and your voice is hugely important to get behind SCI Canada and your local fish and game club or whatever that have been around since 1942 or whatever. It's like, join them as well. So go hang out with the old timers and learn some wisdom. So Chris, thanks very much. Curtis, take us away.
Right on. The Hunter Conservationist podcast is brought to you by J. Martin Taxidermy. This podcast is this is the 1st of September?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know they've been getting after it they've been getting after it for a while up in the North Country, but for most of us regular folk down south, it is go time. So maybe if you drew that tag, or you went on a sweet hunt already up north, or you've been somewhere, maybe you went to Africa, get something cool later in the season, big moose, an elk, anything like that, I would say spend the money and get Jesse to do it up for you. Because I've often talked about that. I've had quite a few friends and acquaintances, people I know that are non-hunters, that come over and they see the mounts, and they're just a great conversation starter to start educating people as to, well, this isn't just a trophy. It's like, here's the story of the hunt, and here's, they're cool. I love them because they're
Kids love them.
Oh, everyone does. Yeah. Yeah. And everyone's always drawn to the mount. So maybe get something this year. Maybe you got something in the freezer. You've been waiting to get something done. So I would highly suggest sending it off to Jesse, J. Martin Taxidermy. As always, big shout out, big thanks, Jesse, for supporting us here at the show, and wish everybody a safe and successful hunting season this year.
Absolutely. And if you're going to ship something to Jesse because you got something cool and you need some import expert help there, Chris is gonna she's gonna clear the path for you. She's gonna break some barriers down and expedite the process for you. So we'll give you a couple of years and you'll have that all tuned up in this country, and hunters will be loving it. So Chris Everett, Safari Club International Canada, doing great things, great conversations, great advocacy work. Let's get behind Chris and the whole team in Canada, including all of the chapters, and good luck, Newfoundland. All right, everybody, thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.